The auditor sits behind a massive oak desk in the semi-darkness of the Sovereign Archive. Dust motes float slowly in the volumetric fog beneath a single green-shaded banker's lamp. He sets down a vintage fountain pen and looks directly into the lens with a cold, analytical gaze. In November 1883, over 500 local clocks across North America were violently erased from public life. Mainstream history textbooks claim Standard Time was invented to stop train crashes. That is a comforting fairy tale for school children. What nobody knew at the time was that Standard Time was an aggressive financial intervention. Private banking syndicates were losing millions of dollars every week in settlement friction between unsynchronized city clocks. The modern global time system was not created by scientists or benevolent governments. It was engineered by railroad cartels, international bankers, and commodity exchanges to synchronize world debt. Before the mid-19th century, time was entirely local and decentralized. Every village, town, and port set its clocks by the noon sun. When the sun reached its absolute zenith overhead, the town clock struck 12. This meant that when it was noon in Boston, it was 11:44 in New York. Philadelphia was 5 minutes behind New York. Washington was 7 minutes behind Philadelphia. Across the American continent alone, there were more than 300 distinct local time zones. Europe suffered from the exact same localized chaos. Each major city maintained its own independent solar reality. Human society had operated under this natural solar regime for thousands of years. Agrarian economies relied on local daylight to plant, harvest, and trade. Local time was free, organic, and tied to nature. Industrial capitalism, however, viewed this local freedom as an intolerable financial bottleneck. The rise of high-speed steam transport and electromagnetic telegraph networks shattered the ancient agrarian world. By the 1870s, thousands of miles of iron rails crisscrossed North America and Europe. Train conductors carried pocket watches set to their home station time. Passengers had to navigate wall displays containing dozens of competing clock faces at every terminal. A traveler riding from Chicago to New York had to adjust their watch 27 times. The mainstream historical narrative focuses heavily on the tragic Valley Falls train collision of 1853. Two trains crashed head-on because their conductors held watches that differed by 2 minutes. Schoolbooks frame Standard Time as a purely humanitarian quest to save human lives. But safety was merely the public relations narrative sold to naive newspaper readers. Corporate boardrooms cared very little about isolated passenger accidents. They cared deeply about yield, asset utilization, and capital throughput. Follow the money. Settlement delays were crippling the expanding international financial clearinghouses. In the late 19th century, international commerce expanded at an unprecedented velocity. Commercial banks issued short-term bills of exchange, telegraphic transfers, and call loans. These financial instruments relied on exact interest calculations per unit of time. If a financial trade occurred in Chicago at noon, Wall Street received the telegraph record minutes later. But Wall Street was operating on a different clock entirely. This small temporal gap created a dangerous gray zone for clearinghouses. Bankers could not determine which transaction held legal priority during market panics. Millions of dollars in interest floating between banks vanished into timing discrepancies. In the high-stakes world of arbitrage, minutes represented immense fortunes lost or won. Financial capital demanded absolute synchronization across all asset classes. Think about that for a second. A 5-minute clock discrepancy could bankrupt a foreign exchange broker. The friction was especially severe in the massive agricultural commodity markets. The Chicago Board of Trade processed millions of bushels of wheat and corn daily. Grain futures contracts were traded across international telegraph lines connected directly to London and Liverpool. Grain prices fluctuated by fractions of a cent every single minute. If a market operator in New York received a grain price quote from Chicago, the solar time difference distorted the spot price. Traders exploited these local time variances to front-run orders and manipulate inventory margins. The financial elite realized that local solar time was an impediment to global price discovery. The physical world of natural solar light was actively sabotaging the virtual world of financial accumulation. The corporate syndicates decided that nature had to be subordinated to the ledger. The real architects of standard time were not astronomers or theoretical physicists. They were corporate lobbyists and private railway executives sitting in mahogany boardrooms. The primary driver in North America was a man named William F. Allen. Allen was not an elected government official. He was the official secretary of the General Time Convention, an industry alliance of private railway lines. Behind Allen stood the formidable financial shadow of Wall Street banking houses. Men like William H. Vanderbilt and the corporate banking interests that preceded J.P. Morgan controlled the capital. These railway barons held immense sovereign debt obligations to European investment houses. Their rail lines had been built on massive speculative bond issues underwritten by London bankers. To service these heavy interest payments, the railways had to operate with mathematical precision. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything. The entire infrastructure of standard time was designed without a single public vote. Neither the United States Congress nor any state legislature authorized the creation of standard time zones. Public hearings were never held to consult the population. The private railway cartels simply met behind closed doors at the Grand Central Depot in New York. They drew four arbitrary vertical lines across the map of the continent. They designated these zones as Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific Time. They selected November 18, 1883, as the date of execution. This event became historically known as the Day of Two Noons. On that Sunday, at exactly 12 o'clock on the Central Railway line, thousands of public clocks were stopped. They were forcefully held still for up to 8 minutes until the new corporate time aligned. The private sector unilaterally seized control of the fundamental dimension of human existence. And no, I'm not making that up. Private corporations simply renamed the hour of the day by financial decree. The immediate public reaction across North America was one of profound outrage and confusion. Citizens felt that their basic human sovereignty was being systematically violated. Editors at popular newspapers denounced the change as an arrogant corporate power grab. Clergymen preached furious sermons from their pulpits condemning the new corporate time. They argued that solar time was established by God, while standard time was dictated by Wall Street. Protesters in city halls demanded that public clocks remain tied to the true local sun. The mayor of Bangor, Maine, flatly refused to reset the city hall clock. He declared that no rail company had the authority to alter the laws of the universe. In Cincinnati, the local observatory director was publicly vilified for surrendering local time to the railroad syndicate. But moral outrage was no match for the financial leverage of the railway lines. The railroads issued a cold financial ultimatum to every municipality along their tracks. Towns that refused to adopt railway time were cut off from telegraphic price updates. Freight trains would no longer honor municipal shipping schedules. Local merchants who insisted on using local solar time found their goods rotting on wooden loading docks. Bank branches that refused to align their vault locks with railway time faced immediate exclusion from the regional bank clearinghouses. The corporate machine gave humanity a clear choice: submit to standardized time or be cast out of the modern industrial economy. Within months, municipal resistance dissolved under the immense weight of economic pressure. The natural rhythm of the sun was extinguished, replaced by the mechanical heartbeat of corporate debt. The standardization of North American time was merely the first phase of a broader global agenda. The global financial system required a single, universal prime meridian to anchor international trade. Up until the late 19th century, international navigation was dangerously fragmented. The French calculated global longitude from the Paris Observatory. The British calculated longitude from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich. The Americans used the Naval Observatory in Washington, while the Spanish used Cadiz. This geographical fragmentation meant that international maritime insurance rates were astronomical. Shipments of bullion, cotton, and tea were constantly delayed by conflicting navigational logs. The merchant marine fleets of the great powers were operating in different temporal worlds. Global insurance underwriting required a single spatial and temporal coordinate system. In October 1884, delegates from 26 nations assembled in Washington, D.C. for the International Meridian Conference. The official history books describe this conference as a triumph of international scientific cooperation. Delegates discussed celestial mechanics, transit telescopes, and global navigation. But behind the diplomatic speeches lay intense geopolitical maneuvering and ruthless financial power plays. The primary conflict erupted between the British Empire and the Republic of France. The French delegation proposed a neutral prime meridian, located far out in the Atlantic Ocean. They argued that selecting Greenwich would give the British Empire an unacceptable psychological and economic monopoly over global commerce. The British delegation remained completely unyielding during the heated debates. They knew they held the ultimate financial trump card in their hands. Here's the thing most people don't realize. The British did not win the Greenwich debate because of superior science. They won because the Bank of England and Lloyd's of London owned global maritime credit. By 1884, over 72% of all global shipping tonnage was already navigated using British Admiralty charts. Furthermore, British merchant banks underwrote over 80% of all international maritime insurance policies. If a foreign shipping line wanted insurance coverage from Lloyd's, its captains had to calculate their positions using Greenwich Mean Time. The financial cost for the world to convert to any other meridian would have destroyed global bond markets. The delegates at the Washington Conference were not choosing a meridian based on geography. They were simply ratifying the cold monetary dominance of the British Empire. Greenwich was crowned as longitude 0 because London was the sovereign capital of world debt. The auditor leans forward under the soft green glow of his banker's lamp in the sovereign archive. He taps his vintage gold pocket watch against the open page of a massive leather bank ledger. He breaks the montage to deliver a cold, cynical revelation directly to the camera. Time was transformed into the ultimate financial extraction tool. By converting human life into standardized hours and minutes, central banks could calculate continuous compound interest across every time zone on Earth. Before you continue exploring this dark history, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. By subscribing, you secure access to the unsanctioned financial mechanics that shaped our modern world. Now, let us return to how this temporal cartel conquered the rest of the planet. France refused to accept the Greenwich victory for nearly 3 decades. The French government viewed the adoption of Greenwich Mean Time as a humiliating national surrender to British capital. They continued to use Paris Mean Time, which was 9 minutes and 21 seconds ahead of Greenwich. But this stubborn national pride carried a devastating economic penalty for French merchants. French banks faced constant clearing delays when settling bills of exchange with London, Berlin, and New York. French shipping lines paid significantly higher insurance premiums to cross the Atlantic. By 1911, the financial isolation of the French commercial banking sector became entirely unsustainable. The French Parliament finally capitulated, passing a law that adopted Greenwich time. To save national face, the text of the law never explicitly mentioned the word Greenwich. It described French time as Paris Mean Time retarded by 9 minutes and 21 seconds. The imposition of standard time was essential for the creation of the modern foreign exchange market. Before standard time, trading currencies between international financial centers was a slow, speculative affair. Price quotes took days or weeks to travel via packet steamships. The introduction of the transatlantic telegraph cable in 1866 accelerated information transfer to minutes. But without synchronized clocks, instant currency trading remained extraordinarily risky. Once London, New York, and Chicago were locked into standardized time zones, arbitrageurs could exploit global price differences in real time. The modern trading floor was born. Banks could now maintain continuous 24-hour trading desks spanning the globe. As the sun set on the London Stock Exchange, trading opened seamlessly on the New York Stock Exchange. The global financial system had successfully liberated itself from the physical constraints of day and night. The standardization of time fundamentally altered the psychological relationship between human beings and their labor. In the pre-industrial era, workers were paid for the task completed or the crop harvested. Time belonged to the individual while the product belonged to the landlord or merchant. Industrial capitalism inverted this ancient economic relationship entirely. Factories required thousands of workers to start and stop machinery at the exact same second. With the introduction of standardized time, employers no longer bought the physical product of labor. They bought the raw, quantified time of the human worker. The punch clock was introduced into factories almost immediately following the 1883 time zone integration. Human life was fragmented into strict 15-minute billable units. Time was literally transformed into money, and money was systematically collected by capital owners. What nobody knew at the time was that standardizing time unlocked the secret machinery of modern central banking. Central banks derive their core revenue from the continuous calculation of interest on debt securities. Interest is simply the monetary price charged for borrowing someone else's time. Under a localized time regime, calculating precise interest across multi-jurisdictional loans was an accounting nightmare. A loan issued in one city and repaid in another suffered from legal ambiguities regarding the exact moment interest accrued. Standardized time established an absolute, unchangeable baseline for financial accounting. Central clearinghouses could now enforce compound interest calculations down to the exact second. Debt was no longer tied to agricultural seasons or natural harvest cycles. It became an relentless, perpetually compounding mathematical force that operated 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The Chicago grain exchanges offer a stark illustration of how standard time crushed independent producers. Before 1883, Midwest farmers sold their grain to local grain elevators based on local market supply. They held significant bargaining leverage because regional buyers could not quickly verify national price trends. Once the Chicago Board of Trade synchronized its clocks with Wall Street and Liverpool, the market shifted violently. Ticker tape machines inside local depots printed synchronized global spot prices every few minutes. A farmer in Iowa was no longer competing against his neighboring county. He was forced to compete against grain producers in Ukraine and Argentina in real time. If global wheat prices dropped in London at 9 in the morning, the Iowa farmer's crop lost value before he finished his breakfast. Standard time centralized global pricing power into the hands of a few commodity brokers in financial capitals. The drive for temporal standardization did not stop with 4 basic national time zones. As international trade expanded, financial capital demanded even greater precision. In 1912, the International Time Conference met in Paris to establish the International Time Bureau. Its explicit goal was to send radio signals from the Eiffel Tower to synchronize clocks across the globe. For the first time in human history, an invisible electromagnetic wave dictated the exact second for billions of human beings. This radio synchronization was crucial for the expanding international shipping lines and early international commercial banking networks. The natural world had been completely enveloped by an artificial electromagnetic grid of time enforcement. During the First World War, the hidden economic utility of standard time was weaponized on a massive scale. Germany became the first nation to introduce daylight saving time in April 1916. The official justification was to conserve coal during wartime fuel shortages. Within weeks, Britain, France, and the United States adopted identical daylight manipulation laws. But the true underlying motive was to maximize industrial factory output per unit of energy expenditure. Governments realized they could arbitrarily manipulate the working day by simply moving the hands of public clocks. Laborers were forced to wake up an hour earlier to feed the industrial war machine. Daylight saving time proved that state and corporate powers could manipulate human circadian rhythms to serve the balance sheet. The corporate capture of time reached its ultimate scientific manifestation with the development of atomic clocks. In 1967, the international scientific community officially redefined the basic unit of human existence. The second was no longer defined by the astronomical rotation of the Earth around the Sun. Instead, a second was defined as 9,192,631,770 vibrations of a cesium-133 atom. Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC, replaced Greenwich Mean Time as the absolute legal standard. The financial system had completely detached time from the planet Earth itself. Human society was now anchored to an artificial atomic vibration managed by international bureaus. In the modern world of 2026, the standardization of time has evolved into an astonishing weapon of microsecond extraction. High-frequency trading firms on Wall Street spend hundreds of millions of dollars building fiber optic networks. They hollow out mountains and lay underwater cables to shave 3 milliseconds off execution speeds between exchanges. At the microsecond level, light traveling through glass is too slow for financial capital. Proprietary algorithms execute tens of thousands of trades in the fraction of a moment it takes a human eye to blink. These automated systems exploit tiny temporal discrepancies between trading servers located in New Jersey and Chicago. The ancient corporate struggle over city clocks in 1883 has migrated into the invisible subatomic microsecond domain. Modern fortunes are stolen not in days or hours, but in nanoseconds of temporal delay. Consider the terrifying reality of modern global financial settlement systems. The entire SWIFT banking network, international wire transfers, and derivative clearinghouses rely entirely on atomic clock synchronization. Every single financial transaction executed on Earth must be stamped with a cryptographic time verification. If the atomic clocks guiding global financial databases were to desynchronize by just a fraction of a second, the global financial system would experience instant catastrophic failure. Automated margin calls would trigger falsely across international stock exchanges. Automated clearinghouses would lock up as priority disputes erupted between competing institutional bank transactions. The entire multi-trillion-dollar virtual debt architecture depends on an unbroken, globally enforced temporal consensus. The global GPS satellite network is fundamentally an orbiting array of atomic clocks operating in deep space. Millions of people believe GPS exists primarily to provide driving directions on their mobile phones. That public assumption is completely false. The primary commercial utility of the GPS network is to provide precise atomic timestamps to central banks, power grids, and cellular networks. Each GPS satellite broadcasts a continuous temporal signal down to Earth. If those orbiting atomic clocks drift by a microsecond, the synchronization of global cellular towers fails. Electric power grids carrying millions of volts of energy collapse instantly. Modern central banks cannot settle interbank loans without the constant temporal heartbeat of these spaceborne clocks. The entire physical and monetary infrastructure of modern civilization is held together by an invisible cage of precise orbital time. Look closely at the nature of sovereign debt in the 21st century. Global national debt has ballooned into unimaginable trillions of dollars. This staggering debt load can never be repaid using physical goods or natural resources. It can only be serviced by mortgaging the future time of generations yet unborn. Central bank fiat money is not backed by gold or physical assets. It is backed exclusively by future human labor locked into time-based debt obligations. Every paper dollar or digital entry represents a legal claim on a human being's future billable hours. Standardized time is the invisible framework that allows central banks to extract this future value today. Without the precise, continuous, and absolute enforcement of time, the global debt construct collapses into nothingness. Human beings in the modern era pride themselves on their individual freedom and personal autonomy. Yet every single morning, billions of people wake up to an artificial electronic alarm. They travel along identical commuting corridors, log into identical digital networks, and exit their workplaces at identical intervals. They live, work, and die according to a temporal grid designed by corporate lobbyists in 1883. Nature's solar cycle has been completely replaced by an unyielding corporate cadence. We no longer look at the sky to determine what time it is. We look down at digital screens connected to centralized atomic servers. Humanity has been thoroughly trained to obey an artificial clock that serves the interests of capital accumulation. The history of standard time exposes a profound truth about how power operates in human society. True power rarely reveals itself through violent conquest or political propaganda. The most effective forms of control are those that become so ubiquitous that they are taken for granted as natural facts. Standardized time was not a neutral scientific evolution that simply made modern life convenient. It was a calculated, top-down monetary restructuring of human perception. It converted the infinite natural flow of existence into a countable, rentable, and taxable economic commodity. The world obeys Standard Time today not because it is natural, but because the global financial system leaves us no other choice. The auditor slowly closes his heavy, leather-bound archive folio and reaches up to turn down the brass key of his green banker's lamp. The warm illumination fades, leaving his analytical features partially shadowed in the soft fog of the sovereign archive. 500 local clocks were erased in 1883 to save bank balance sheets, proving that whoever controls the clock controls the flow of world wealth. Human technology evolves across centuries, but the cold machinery of monetary control remains entirely unchanged. If you watched this investigation to the very end, drop a $ symbol in the comments section below to confirm your presence in the archive. Subscribe to the channel right now, and click the next video on your screen to step behind the curtain of economic history.